Hello, BookTube. We're continuing our read-through of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. I'm doing this with David Wiley and Tony from An Erudite Adventure, and we are taking an unconventional route. We are reading The Two Towers first, instead of reading The Fellowship of the Ring. And I'm taking an even more unconventional route, because in addition to reading The Two Towers first, I'm doing a separate video on every chapter. And we are up now to a chapter called The Forbidden Pool. We have been following not the main epic story that starts off the book The Two Towers, the part of the book called The Two Towers, but rather the much smaller scale story of Frodo the Hobbit and his servant Sam and the creature Gollum walking their way into Mordor, the stronghold of Sauron the Dark Lord, so that they can take his one ring to the fires of Mount Doom and destroy it, removing it from the world rather than hiding it or throwing it into the ocean or anything like that. They want to destroy it, which would permanently maim Sauron as a force for evil, and also remove the evil of the ring itself, which threatens people. It suborns people, as we famously saw in the Fellowship of the Ring. Those of you who've read the book already, and we saw the aftermath in the first part of The Two Towers. It suborns Boromir, proud warrior man of the kingdom of Gondor, the son of Denethor, the steward of Gondor. It suborns him to such a point that he tries to physically take it from Frodo. He doesn't succeed, and he regrets his action before he ends up dead. But that event comes back to haunt us in this book, because when Boromir tries to steal the ring from Frodo, Frodo flees from him with Sam. So all these weeks and weeks later, when Frodo and Sam are in a relatively unspoiled area of the south that is very near to Mordor. It's right on the border of Mordor. Right when they're there, they encounter a band of warriors that is led by Faramir, Boromir's brother. So Faramir has had a vision that his brother is dead, and Faramir trusts that vision. They've also found the cloven horn of Boromir, which would certainly not have happened if he had been alive. Faramir is certain that his brother is dead and brings Frodo that news. Frodo brings Faramir the news that Gandalf, the wizard, is dead. Frodo is wrong about that, but he doesn't know that. And although Frodo learns to his dismay that Boromir is dead, he's dismayed not only because that might mean that the rest of the Fellowship was endangered, and some of them might be dead as well, including his hobbit friends, but also because it's an uneasy end to Frodo's relationship with Boromir, which he feels necessary to hide from Faramir, of course. He doesn't want to tell Faramir, well, your brother went insane with desire for this thing that I'm hiding but not showing to you, and tried to take it from me. And so that's why I fled. That's why the Fellowship broke apart, because of him. He doesn't want to say that to Faramir. It's awkward, and also Frodo is worried that Faramir is at the head of a warrior band. He's worried that if Faramir is the same temptable nature as his brother, he could lose everything. He could set up another Dark Lord without even wanting to. And we saw in the last chapter that there's a weird moment when Faramir seems to pantomime that. He seems to play act that has actually happened to him. He almost like he wants to get Sam and Frodo alarmed into thinking that he has gone the route of Boromir. It doesn't turn out to be true. And it isn't. It's not that it's not true because Faramir is fighting that temptation. He says, I don't even feel the temptation. Which, as I said last time, makes me wonder why he would do that. Why he would suddenly assume that kind of drunk with power verbiage when he knows the effect it will have on his two guests. But that's how we end the chapter, with Faramir saying that, I'm not even such as to be tempted by this thing, but I understand that it's a burden that you have to bear, and you have my blessing, you have my protection as a captain of Gondor, as far as the borders of Gondor run. And we end the chapter that way, and if you're going through this for the first time, you might be thinking, well, okay, that's great for Sam and Frodo, but what about Gollum? Gollum fled when these warrior men appeared, and he has not reappeared. He's got to be around somewhere. He's not going to be far from the ring, his precious. He's not going to be far from Frodo and Sam. He's not going to be far from the action. He's involved here. He's not going to just take off, especially in the wilds of Mordor. He's had trouble with that once or twice before. He went to Mordor and was captured and tortured in the dark seat of Barad-dûr. He also encountered Aragorn in the Dead Marshes, and that went poorly too. So He's nearby, and the warriors under Faramir's control know that he's nearby. They've seen something creeping around and up the trees that they know is not a black squirrel. They know it's not an orc. And in this chapter, we meet Gollum. Frodo wakes up as the chapter starts, just like Sam woke up at the start of the chapter right before this. Frodo wakes up to Faramir looming over him. Which, again, is not something I would do if I knew what Faramir knows about the ring. And Faramir says, "I have to show you something." And he takes Frodo and Sam through a winding, wet staircase to a rather beautiful overlook of a grotto pouring into a waterfall. And there's a dark shape down there that's fishing, diving in and out of the water for fish that it will eat raw with its mouth. All of Faramir's men are ready with notched arrows. They could kill this thing instantly. But Frodo knows right away that it's Gollum and begs that Gollum be spared. Faramir tells him the penalty for anyone finding this particular entrance to our hidden lair is death. Can't risk anyone giving us our word. We just kill people that come this far, servants of the enemy or not. Frodo begs for mercy for Gollum and says, "I can make him behave. I can make him come to us." Frodo goes down and talks with Gollum just long enough for Faramir's men to apprehend him and for Faramir to question him. And as I mentioned last time, Faramir is very much his father's son. He has the almost preternatural perceptivity of his kind. Almost mind reading. Denethor, his father, certainly brings it to the level of mind reading. And Faramir actually says he studies Gollum eye to eye for a long minute, the longest that Gollum can go before he averts his gaze. And Faramir says there are locked rooms in your mind, locked rooms and closed windows. There are things that I can't see in your mind. But he does see enough to warn Frodo, this being has killed people. He has certainly done that. Whether he says it or not, I have seen it. And when Faramir says that, you very much get the impression that he has seen memories, that it's not intuition, that he's exercising an ability that normal men don't have. And it's intriguing. There are human men throughout the Lord of the Rings that do have something like this ability. Gollum swears that he will behave himself, and Faramir insists, well, you were his guide, and you obviously weren't taking him to the Black Gate, because the Black Gate is immense and eternally guarded. It's impenetrable. So you can't have been expecting to take Frodo, your new master, through that route. So where were you guiding him? And Faramir even says, I'm afraid you can't stay silent on that question. I need to know the answer to that, or I will withdraw my protection. And presumably you will either be imprisoned or shot full of arrows. Finally, the answer comes out, that Gollum is taking Frodo and Sam to the Pass of Cirith Ungol, which is deeply, deeply rumored in dark, horrible, terrifying tales. Faramir is piously horrified when he hears that and warns Frodo explicitly, do not go that way. Do not do it. Gandalf wouldn't have wanted you to do it. There are dark mysteries in those passes and the passes lead to what was once the sister city of Minas Tirith, which is now entirely overrun by the Nazgul, by the Black Riders, who are the servants of Sauron. It's an entirely evil place to go. Faramir makes it clear that there are no innocent, undiscovered back doors to Sauron's stronghold. You're only going to face horrible evil if you go looking for such a thing. And the implication floating over all this, as we've seen in a few different parts in these chapters, is that Gollum might be complicit in that evil. He might know what he's doing. He might be leading Sam and Frodo into a trap intentionally. That could easily be true. But Faramir and Frodo have a frank discussion. Frodo says, I have a mission, and you've admitted yourself it can't happen through the Black Gate. So it has to happen some other way. Otherwise, what? They actually have an exchange. I want to read it to you because Faramir goes into some depth on how corrupt this place is that they're going to. The valley of Minas Morgul passed into evil very long ago, and it was a menace and a dread while the banished enemy dwelt yet far away. And Ithilien was still, for the most part, in our keeping. As you know, that city was once a strong place, proud and fair, Minas Ithil, the twin sister of our own city. but it was taken by fell men whom the enemy in his first strength had dominated, and who had wandered homeless and masterless after his fall. It is said that their lords were men of Numenor, who had fallen into dark wickedness. To them the enemy had given rings of power, and he had devoured them. Living ghosts they were become, terrible and evil. After his going they took Minas Ithil and dwelt there, and they filled it and all the valley about with decay. It seemed empty, and was not so, for a shapeless fear lived within the ruined walls. The 9 lords there were, and after the return of their master, which they aided and prepared in secret, they grew strong again. Then the 9 riders issued forth from the gates of horror, and we could not withstand them. Do not approach their citadel. You will be espied. It is a place of sleepless malice, full of lidless eyes. Do not go that way. And Frodo's listening, of course, but he's between a rock and a hard place. He has no alternative, as he says. But where else would you direct me? Said Frodo. You cannot yourself, you say, guide me to the mountains, nor over them. But over the mountains I am bound, by solemn undertaking to the council, to find a way or perish in the seeking. And if I turn back, refusing the road to its bitter end, where then shall I go among elves or men? Would you have me come to Gondor with this thing? The thing is a capital T. They both know what they're talking about. Would you have me go to Gondor with this thing? The thing that drove your brother mad with desire? What spell would it work in Minas Tirith? Should there be 2 cities of Minas Morgul grinning at each other across a dead land filled with rottenness? What Frodo is trying to say there, very diplomatically, the hobbits are very courteous people. What he is trying to get at there is Denethor, is Faramir's father. It's not Faramir, and it's of course not Boromir, who's past caring, as Saint Ma used to say. It's Denethor. It's what would happen if someone really powerful in Minas Tirith got the ring. Do you want that? Can you trust that that wouldn't happen? Can you guarantee me that that wouldn't happen? And that wouldn't solve anything anyway. The ring has to be destroyed. Can't be handed off to somebody else or hidden. The last place you want it is in Gondor, even if everybody in Gondor is as immune to its effect as Faramir is. The last place you want it is the first place Sauron's going to strike. It seems like there is no alternative. Faramir certainly can't provide one. He can't give Frodo anything. So they part ways. Faramir says, down the line sometime, I don't think I'll ever see you alive again, but down the line sometime, if we ever meet in this land, face to face as living people, we'll sit against a sunny wall and tell stories and answer all each other's questions. And off they go to the next chapter. And so this chapter is very brief, very businesslike. Basically, the only thing that happens in this chapter is that Gollum is found and reveals what he wants to do, the route that he wants to take, which is dead set against the men of Gondor and especially of Faramir. Says absolutely don't take that way, but Frodo doesn't have any other way. There is no other way. He has to take that way because the other way, the only other way, the direct approach to the Black Gate is completely impossible. It would be him simply delivering the One Ring to Sauron. At least this other way is not a dead certainty. So he has to do it. That debate is very short. Those 2 paragraphs that I read you are all there is of it. And then that's it. They part ways. So it's a very businesslike chapter, and it raises a question that I've heard from a number of people who have read The Lord of the Rings over the years, over the decades where I've read and reread this thing, including a lot of people who love these Hobbit chapters when they knew I did not. For a long time, I was intolerant towards these Hobbit chapters. Thankfully, after this read-through, I will never be intolerant towards them again. They are wonderful in their own way. It's a completely different narrative register. That's the only thing, the only change that they have to get used to. It's a completely different book. Half of this book is one book, half of this book is another. Although there are parallels, as I mentioned yesterday. But even from people who like these chapters over the decades when I've been talking about this book, even they would often say that they really don't know what Faramir is doing in this part of the book. They really don't understand what this whole interlude was about. And rereading this chapter, I can sort of see why. Faramir has absolutely no effect on the plot at all. None whatsoever. Maybe he gives Frodo the news that Boromir is dead. That news has no effect on anything. It's just something that Frodo didn't know before that he does know now. But Faramir doesn't give Frodo safe passage anywhere. He doesn't give him any kind of arms or equipment. He gives Frodo and Sam a supper, and then a good night's sleep, and then a breakfast, maybe a lunch, and then And then off they go. As far as I know, they don't even get equipment from Faramir, who he and his men have nothing to spare. So it's not there. They're not being, stingy or anything. But no vital intelligence is passed. You're automatically thinking of another momentous meeting earlier in the Two Towers when Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli meet the Riders of Rohan. But they aren't the same, because the Riders of Rohan not only give them vital information, the orc band that you are chasing is all dead. We killed them. We found them further up the road and killed them, every one of them. But I also give them horses, which changes the plot just a bit. It makes the plot possible. Because as Gandalf points out later on in the early part of this book, even Shadowfax can't carry all of them. So they need other horses. That changes the plot. Nothing, you could take Faramir out of this book and nothing would change at all. Frodo and Sam start off unwillingly, untrustingly, following Gollum's lead to the pass of Cirith Ungol. Then they get interrupted by these big spear-wielding men. They have some conversations with these big spear-wielding men, and then the big spear-wielding men move on, and Frodo and Sam are very distrustingly following Gollum to the path of Cirith Ungol. Nothing changes at all. So I kind of wonder, why Tolkien put this in there. It's absolutely impossible to me. A little detail here and there might be a bit of an oversight for a book that was written and rewritten many, many times, redrafted many, many times. But a huge section of the book cannot be a mistake. So you tell me, what is Faramir doing in this book? What purpose does this whole 2 chapters serve? He doesn't part their way from Gollum. He doesn't hurt Gollum or change Gollum. He doesn't change either one of them. He doesn't send any of his men along to see if they can help out. He doesn't do anything like that. So if he doesn't affect the plot at all, if he doesn't affect the outcome of the action in any way, then what's he doing in here? I confess, I really, really enjoyed learning about him. I enjoy him as a character, but I read this again now and I still don't see what he's doing in there. But it doesn't matter because he's gone. We're moving on in the next chapter and it will be Faramir free. So we will move on. We'll be going back to our trio of characters. Frodo and Sam and Gollum. And we'll be with them for the rest of the book. So I'm going to wrap this up for now. I may do a couple of chapters tomorrow just because I'd kind of like to finish the 2 Towers in February. We'll see. I'll have to do the math, which always takes a bit of time for me. But I don't. If I do 1 chapter a day from now, I missed a bit of time. And I think if I do 1 chapter a day from now on, I won't finish the 2 Towers before February is out, before Tuesday. Is that right? Tuesday is last day? I'll have to check. If I have to cinch up by doing a couple of chapters in a row, I'll do that in a video. It certainly won't be a hardship for me. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.